This is our third video in Chapter 10, and we will be looking at a problem on interest capitalization. Let's take a look at the problem. It tells us on January 1, year 1, the Maxley Company began construction of an office building to be used as its corporate headquarters. It was completed early in year 2. Construction expenditures for year 1, they were incurred evenly throughout the year, totaled $5 million. Maxley had the following debt obligations which were outstanding during all of year 1. We have a construction loan and then 2 long-term notes as well. And we are required to calculate the amount of interest capitalized in year 1 for the building using the specific interest method. So a couple of things we'll need to know going forward are that the building was completed early in year 2, and our expenditures were incurred evenly throughout the year and totaled $5 million, and we'll be using the specific interest method. So I'd write those down before we move to the next slide. So the first thing we have to do with the specific interest method is figure out what our average accumulated expenditures were. And that formula is going to be our end of year expenditures plus our beginning of year expenditures totals divided by 2 to get the average. So if you recall from the problem, at the end of the year, we had $5 million of expenditures that were incurred evenly throughout the year. So we'll put $5 million here. And at the beginning of the year, it did not indicate we had any, so that will be 0. We divide by 2 to get the average, and that's going to be $2.5 million for our average accumulated expenditures. So that's what we know we had to cover with our debts throughout the year. And these are our presumed funding sources. So with the specific interest method, we start with what was funded with specific debt. So we look at our 3 types of debts here. We had a construction loan and then these 2 long-term notes. So the construction loan is our specific debt, obviously because it's construction, so it was for the construction expenditures. So that's a 10% loan. And the total of it was $1,660,000. So that's the first source of debt we're going to plug in as one of our funding sources. It's going to be $1,660,000. Multiply by the 10% to figure out what the interest amount that needs to be capitalized is, and that's going to be $166,000. So we have $2.5 million in expenditures that we need to cover, and we only had $1,660,000 in our construction loan. So that means the rest needs to come from general debt, which are 2 long-term notes. So let's figure out how much needs to be covered. So we take our $2.5 million, subtract what we have covered with the construction loan, and that's going to give us $840,000 we need to cover with general debt. So plug that in here. Now the only problem is we don't know what interest rate we need to use because this is general debt, so we don't know which long-term note was used to cover this $840,000. So we need to find the average debt rate between these 2 general debt loans. So to do that, we take our interest total at 9% and 6% with the separate amounts. So at $2.5 million times 9%, that's going to give us $225,000 of interest. $5 million at 6% is going to give us $300,000. And that total is $525,000 in interest between the 2. So what we'll do is we take the total interest, $525,000, and divide it by the total outstanding loan amounts to get us an average debt rate. So $7.5 million. That's what we'll divide by. And that's going to give us an average debt rate of 7%. So that's what we're going to multiply the $840,000 by. And when we do that calculation, you get $58,800. So now we can add up the interest we calculated from specific debt and general debt, and that's what's going to be our interest to be capitalized. So that total is going to be $224,800. So I'll put that in here as well. And as a check here, you can look at the 2 amounts that we covered that add up to 2.5 million. And that agrees with our amount up here that we calculated for average accumulated expenditures.